As a business owner, you either stand out or you're going to get lost in the shuffle. Real estate is an extremely competitive line of business where in my city, in Calgary, we have around 8,000 agents that are all competing for the same clients. If you don't stand out and if you don't bring something unique to the table, to the point where people look at you and say, okay, this person is better than everybody else, or this person offers me something unique, you aren't going to be able to build a very strong business unless you happen to have a very strong SOI database, which most people probably don't have. So if you can't rely on an extremely strong SOI where everybody's ready to buy with you and everybody's ready to sell with you, you need to be able to stand out. This is where I want to talk about unique selling propositions, otherwise known as USPs. So you might have heard this term get thrown around before, and I see it get used from time to time. It's very important to understand what it is, but also what it is not, because I think a lot of people take it for granted and they think that things that they are doing, things that they are saying, are unique selling propositions, whereas in reality, a lot of the time, they simply are not. So what is a USP? Well, it's a feature, service, or quality that cannot or will not be delivered by somebody else, aka your competition. Let's talk about the three defining aspects of a USP. First of all, it must be rare or it must be unique. Of course, unique is ideal. If you're the only person in the world that can do a certain thing or provide a certain thing, you're gonna stand out like crazy and you're gonna make a lot of money. The reality is that most of us aren't going to be quite that unique. So at the very least, whatever we're providing has to at least be rare. It can't be something that everybody else is saying or doing. The second piece is that it must be of value or it must be of benefit. This can't just be something that you're doing, but it doesn't really benefit the person you're talking with. That doesn't make any sense. They're not going to care about that. And the third and final thing, it must be easily and effectively communicated. If you can't articulate what your USP is, then it doesn't exist. The analogy that I like to use for this is imagine that somebody is a really good stock picker. So they can pick the right stocks, they can pick the right index funds, ETFs, whatever it is, and they can get an extremely high rate of return. Unless they can prove it and unless they can show it and unless they can very easily communicate the fact that they have this ability to other people, it doesn't matter. It'll benefit them, but it's not going to change the way that people look at this investor because they've heard it before. A lot of people will come onto the scene and say that they are geniuses and they will help you pick the right stocks. You're very skeptical. So you have to prove it by properly communicating it and showing evidence. Now, the approach I want to take today is I want to show you what are some examples of bad USPs and what are some examples of good USPs. And when I say a bad USP, I mean, it's not necessarily really a USP. Some people might think that it's a USP, but a lot of buyers or sellers are not going to really agree in the sense that they think this is an amazing quality that they can't get anywhere else. So the first one is showing properties all across town. I have access to every single property across the city. I'm going to show you these properties. I'm going to set you up on an automatic search. I'm going to send you these homes. There's not a lot of value here. If you're the only realtor this lead happens to know and there's literally nobody else that they could go to, yes, this becomes valuable. But when you're competing with thousands of other agents, anybody can do this. Anybody can show every single property. Anybody can send them homes. There's nothing of value here. This is extremely basic, and you do not stand out when you do these things. The second one here is I've been in the business for X number of years. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15, maybe it's 20. Some people do appreciate this, and I do think that there is a certain amount of buyers and sellers out there that are looking for that experience. Just because you tell somebody, hey, I've been in this for a long time, but you maybe aren't super well effective at communicating your value, doesn't sound like you really know what you're talking about. They're still gonna choose somebody else over you. So don't rely on the crutch of I've been in the business for this long, because honestly, it's just not that valuable unless you have something to back it up with. Negotiating the best price. Every agent is going to say that they're going to negotiate the best price. If you're really good at this, yes, this is extremely valuable and people will appreciate it. But you saying to a client, to a lead, that you're going to negotiate the best price doesn't mean anything because everybody's saying that. So how do you actually stand out? How can you show that you're going to negotiate the best price? If you have a lot of things to back this up and you can somehow explain and really articulate what it is about you and your strategy that is going to help that buyer get a better price, that does become a value. But simply saying, I'm going to negotiate you the best price, that is not really a USP in and of itself. Every agent is going to say that. And then of course, TikTok dances. Hey, listen, it's great if you have a good social following, but realistically, you making social content is not always going to be a USP. All right, now let's talk about good USPs. So if you have expert area knowledge, I would say that this is a unique selling proposition. Most realtors are not experts. They simply haven't taken the time to study the market. They haven't taken the time to learn everything. Just because somebody's been in the business for 10 to 20 years does not mean that they're an expert. They might have certain knowledge, but that doesn't mean that they are masters of the entire market. Okay, so some specifics on this. So number one, it's going to be understanding specific developments. If let's say you're showing a buyer and you're able to articulate, Mrs. Buyer, here is what we're going to have coming up. So the west side here, they're redeveloping that. They're going to be putting in a mall. They're also going to be adding in a new road on the east side, which is going to allow people to access the community easier. Here's what's going to be happening nearby. And you have all this information. Now that is a unique selling proposition, because most agents do not go deep enough and learn all these things, and they can't provide that level of information. Insider knowledge of recent sales. Now, what I mean here is you need to have a very strong understanding. How long was the property on the market? Why did it take for it to sell as long as it did? How many offers did it receive? What did the property show like on the inside? Did it have a smoke smell? Was there something else that was wrong with it? Was it missing a bunch of permits, and was that turning off potential buyers? When you know a property inside and out, especially if you're using it as a comparable, you have a level of what I like to call insider knowledge. People will think that, wow, this agent truly understands the market. This agent really follows everything that's going on, and they have the inside scoop. A lot of agents take this for granted and they think this isn't important, but this is super key. How do you get this information? Well, you need to study the neighborhoods. You need to really understand what you're doing. Call other agents that are selling or have sold properties in the area. Ask them questions. A lot of agents will cooperate with you and show up ready to deliver valuable insights. Shifts in the market and inventory. Again, this is another one that I think everybody takes for granted. Truly understanding where's the market going, what is going to be happening, what are the forces driving the current conditions. It's not that common. In fact, a lot of agents cannot articulate what is going on with the market. I'm not saying you have to have a crystal ball, because nobody can predict what the market's going to do in a year. And anybody who says that they can, they may not be being truthful, because realistically anything can happen. Go back to 2020, the market reacted based on an event that was unprecedented and nobody could have predicted that. So you don't have to have magical powers, but you do need to understand the forces that are driving the current trends inside the market. And the last one here is downsides of a community as well as particular housing. So a given community may have specific downsides. Let's say that there is a homeless shelter in a community, and a lot of people might find that as a negative. If you don't know this, then you can't articulate some of the pros and cons with the community. Sometimes it could be that access and egress during specific times of the day are going to be a problem. Sometimes it's a matter of another community next door is being redeveloped and they have much more attractive price points that are driving the price points of this community that you're showing in down. If you can articulate this and know this, that's a huge USP. Now, the second one I want to talk about here is going to be focused more on the listings. Sometimes if a seller is going to try to achieve something, maybe they're rezoning, maybe they need permits, if you can communicate on their behalf with the city, that can be a unique selling proposition. Most agents are not going to do this. They're not going to know how to do it. I'm not saying you have to do this every time, but this would be an example of something that would be unique. How about offering a pre-listing inspection? Now, the question you have to ask here is all my competition offering a pre-listing inspection? If it is, it's no longer a USP. But if you're the only one in your market who is offering this, who's offering to pay for a home inspector to come in, do a pre-list inspection so that you can then deliver that to the buyer, make them feel comfortable, and hopefully avoid a lengthy condition period, you are now offering a unique selling proposition, which makes you stand out. Staging and or staging consults. Again, if everybody in the market's doing this, not a USP, not that valuable. But if you're the only one, or you and maybe a handful of other agents are offering this, then it does become a USP and it can help you win over clients. And the final one here is having a database of buyers for a particular area. If you're going to be listing a home in community A and you happen to have a popular website where you're capturing a lot of buyer leads and a lot of those people are searching around in that specific area, you can then present this to your seller and explain that you have people that are ready to go who are looking in that specific area. You have their emails, you have their phone numbers, you have their names. You can reach out to those people and then sell them the property. That becomes a unique selling proposition. So especially if you're running a lot of online ads and you're building a buyer database, this is something that can be a very important USP. As a business owner, the more USPs that you can offer in particular situations to buyers or sellers, the better you're going to be, because you're going to stand out. A typical agent who opens the door, shows properties, and asks a client if they want to write an offer can't compete with somebody who is bringing a whole list of unique selling propositions. The second thing I want to show you guys is how this applies to actual real estate itself. I'm going to be showing you a few different communities, and I'm going to be talking about communities with USPs and communities without. Think of it like this. A community with a USP is a destination community. It's a place where people have a reason to go there other than simply getting the best price. A community that has no unique selling propositions is more of a budget community. People are moving there because they can get a reasonable home for a reasonable price. So there's a difference between the two. And if you can articulate this to buyers and sellers, they're going to understand communities a lot better. So I'm looking at Auburn Bay. This is a community in Calgary. If you take a look at the map here, you can see that right in the middle is a lake. This is a human-made lake where people can swim, they can kayak, they can do all sorts of cool stuff. A community that offers a lake to all of the residents within that community, that's a huge USP. You go a couple communities over, you don't get that. Well, now Auburn Bay has a specific reason to draw people in. And let's compare that to New Brighton and Copperfield. Now, yes, they do have some ponds, but you can't swim in them. They're not actual lakes. So don't make that mistake of thinking that it's the same thing. They're very different. So New Brighton and Copperfield do not have a lake. Copperfield in particular doesn't really have a lot of USPs. You could say that its USP is that you're getting a really good price. And you're paying less for a home, you're getting more bang for your buck because the community is not going out of its way to provide something extremely attractive that's going to be bringing people in. And that's totally fine. Budget communities have a place in real estate because people need homes and they want homes for reasonable prices. Here are two more examples of communities with USP. So take a look at Parkland here. You can see that on the southwest side of the community, it's surrounded by a park. This is Fish Creek Park, extremely walkable, very nice, probably the single best park in Calgary. I love that park. I've been there a million times. So that community, because it borders it, because it offers people very quick access, and all the homes that are facing the park are very desirable, that community now has a USP. Here's one more. This is Varsity Estates. If you look on the west side, you can see that there's a golf course. As a result, there's a lot of homes in the estate sections that are backing onto this golf course. You can bet that that's very attractive to people who have the money to buy a more expensive home and to be backing onto a golf course rather than other properties. The more you understand unique selling propositions, the more you employ them in the business, and the more you can help buyers understand which communities do and do not offer unique things, the better your business is going to go.